Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Iron Giant, featuring the voices of Eli Marienthal, Vin Diesel, Jennifer Aniston, Harry Connick Jr., Christopher McDonald, and James Gammon, directed by Brad Bird. Now, I remember this movie coming out in theaters in the year 1999, and it was opening against Mystery Men, another movie that opened the same weekend as this. And and I remember really enjoying this movie, but does it live up to the hype? And people are loving it like it's a classic. So will it still hold up? Let's see how this goes, because I haven't seen it in a long time. So let's get into it. It's 1957 on Earth, and an iron giant from outer space, voiced by Vin Diesel, crash lands on the ocean near a lighthouse. And after a ship led by Earl Stutz crashes and lands on the lighthouse in a dark, stormy weather, which is scary but a good opener. As this animation was good for 1999, as we pick up on the next day with Hogarth Hughes, voiced by Eli Marienthal, coming to a diner where his mother Annie, voiced by Jennifer Aniston, works at as he tries to bring home a pet squirrel, and it runs out and crawls up on a customer's leg named Dean McCoppin, voiced by Harry Connick Jr. And at some point, Dean bursts out by making a scene and by unzipping his pants, and the squirrel runs, which was kind of amusing. And later on in the day, Hogarth gets home, and Annie unfortunately works later at night, while Hogarth eats rather unhealthy while watching scary movies about a brain monster, which looked cheesy, by the way, until the antenna is eaten by the Iron Giant. But Hogarth doesn't know it yet, as he looks for the Iron Giant and finds him eating metal at the electric plant, and the plot gets to where it needs to be in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And that is simple but impressive at the same time. Hogarth finds the Iron Giant eating metal and gets stuck on some electric wires and saves the Iron Giant's life, while there is a blackout once Annie gets back home rather late and looks for the boy, and while she does find him near the power plant, and he tries to tell her about the metal man as a robot, and she doesn't believe it, as she's led to believe he's making it up. Same thing goes for the kids at school, as Dean and Earl sees kids at school as Dean sees Earl and someone getting a tractor bitten out by the Iron Giant in half, while we get introduced to Kent Mansley, voiced by Christopher McDonald, who works in the government while he believes the story was made up until his car was eaten, and finds Hogarth's BB gun while Hogarth looks for the Iron Giant. And I really do like these characters, as they're well developed, even the Iron Giant himself. And Hogarth's actor Eli Marienthal does a better job here than, say, a couple of the American Pie movies, as he was too much in those films and they're not for kids. The Iron Giant encounters Hogarth, and Hogarth learns the Iron Giant is not here to hurt anyone, as he learns a couple of words like rock and tree, like this: rock, tree. While Kent explains this is no meteor, and Hogarth says he'll come back tomorrow, and the Iron Giant follows him until he almost eats some train tracks, and the train is coming, and as it fixes the tracks, the train hits the Iron Giant as he can fix himself, which was a cool idea, while he goes in the barn. And I did like the plot, as it's simple for an 85-minute movie. While Kent sees the train accident and gets to a telephone where he meets Hogarth and Annie while eating dinner, and the Giant's hand hides from Annie and Kent as he uses their telephone, which was kind of amusing, as there were times the humor was clever. Ken calls General Rogard at home about what he saw, and he realizes after leaving the house he has the BB gun that belongs to Hogarth. And I like Christopher McDonald in the villain role, like in Happy Gilmore, which is a film I reviewed and also not a kid's movie. And Hogarth takes the Iron Giant into town where people aren't ready for it quite yet. And it walks back, and Hogarth teaches the Iron Giant some things about planet Earth, and they encounter Dean as he works at the scrap metal place and throws a car at the place where Dean lives at, and eventually he meets the Iron Giant as he says his name with a smile, like everybody does earlier in the film, For example, Dean! Like that, see? As he says, you are who you choose to be, which is a smart piece of dialogue, and I like the writing in the movie. Kent rents the room they've been trying to rent for some time now, as Kent is annoying Hogarth to death, and Annie asks him to show Kent that sights, and they end up at the ice cream shop, where as he makes Kent eat chocolate that makes him go good old number two, and ditches him while Dean tells the Iron Giant to eat the scrap and not the art. And it learns arts and crafts, and when Hogarth has some fun as a rocket ship and go to the lake for a swim, and I'm finding this movie pretty clever, and it's telling a good story in my opinion. Ken finds a photograph of Hogarth knowing something about the Iron Giant, while the witness nature and seeing a deer before a couple of hunters kill it, and the Iron Giant almost lasers out because of the hunters' guns, which is something we'll learn about at the end of the film, while the Iron Giant feels bad about the deer as it learns it has a soul, and souls don't die, which is very good advice, and Hogarth gets home and is interrogated by Kent about where the Iron Giant is at, and Kent tells Hogarth he could be taken away from his mother unless he tells him where it's at, and he gives it up in the junkyard where Dean is at, and is briefly poisoned and knocked down until he wakes up and hears the army arrive in the morning, and Kent says to him, don't get cute, until he falls asleep, and Ken eventually falls asleep, and Hogarth warns Dean about the army coming for the Iron Giant off screen. Yes, this was off screen, where Hogarth warns Dean about that. As Dean knows what to do about hiding the Iron Giant, and Hogarth proves to General Rogard Kent is imagining things as he blew millions of Uncle Sam's Dowdas out of his butt. And that was a hilarious line, in my opinion. As Annie learns more about the Iron Giant and stays with Dean, and the Iron Giant for the day, and some scenes are a little intense but humorous at times. Hogarth plays with the Iron Giant disguised as Superman, and he shoots his lasers twice until Dean sees his eyes are a gun, and a few seconds later he reacted to the toy gun that Hogarth was using as Dean realizes it, and the Iron Giant runs away upset, takes a walk as a couple of boys almost in town almost fall to their death, and the Iron Giant saves their lives and shows them as a good guy in town. Hogarth, Annie, and Dean get there, as does the army along with Kent, and they attack the Iron Giant as Dean tries to kill Kent and General Rogard. If there's no guns, he's harmless. That's what Dean says to Kent, while Hogarth and the Iron Giant almost run over a bus full of kids as Annie follows them, and as it turns out, the Iron Giant can fly, and that was a cool moment of the film, as he flies like Superman until the missiles hit it, and they crash land, and the Iron Giant is led to believe Hogarth is dead, and the army shoots at it, and it has lasers on his arms, and many, many weapons, of some kind, which was pretty cool tricks up its sleeves. And I like they use his tricks. Dean and Annie picks up an unconscious Hogarth and almost takes him to the hospital until he gets out of the truck and runs to the Iron Giant as it makes a nuclear explosion and tells him who you choose to be, and he brings the Iron Giant to show them he's friendly, while Kent orders the army to launch the missile where the Iron Giant is at, which is with civilians of the town, as the missile goes up the sky, and the Iron Giant decides to sacrifice itself for the civilians as he chose to what he chooses to be, which is Superman, as he blows up like a giant bomb. And everyone in the town is saved, and we see the townspeople living their lives, and Hogarth is playing with his friends, and Dean and Annie hang out together like they're dating, as there's a statue dedicated to the memory of the Iron Giant, and Dean gets a box from the general of what remains of the giant as nighttime comes, and he hears the piece being called by the Iron Giant and comes to him in Iceland as it's still alive, and the climax was very good and nicely bow-tied and clever, and I was glad it ended up as an 85-minute movie. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. The animation is impressive for 1999, as I like the characters as they're written, as Harry Connick Jr., Vin Diesel, Jennifer Aniston, Christopher McDonald, and Eli Marienthal are quite good in this movie, as this might be Eli Marienthal's best role, even better than the first two American Pie films, and the writing is pretty good as it tells a good story, in my opinion. There were times I was finding this clever, as I was amused by some of the humor, as the dialogue was smartly written, and in my opinion, and it gets to the plot within 10 minutes into the movie, as this is an 85-minute movie, as I was glad that for that runtime for this movie. And there were times it was a little intense, as at the same time it was clever. The voice actors are great in their roles, as this movie still works 25 years later, as this is a solid recommendation, or almost 25 years later, let me rephrase that. But again, solid recommendation, as this movie still works for kids as well as adults that lived through the memories of their parents being born around the 1950s, or any adult that was alive during that time. So yeah, this was a very good movie, and I would still watch this again. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this review, and until next time, rock tree.